Welcome to True Crime 101 with Murder Friends, the podcast where three friends from three different countries talk about murder. My name's Alanna and I'm Canadian.
Hi, I'm Anna and I'm American.
My name's Hannah and I'm British.
In addition to our longer episodes, True Crime 101 talks you through key true crime cases and theories. Now, this week, we are going back to Canada. Do you guys know the name Robert Pickton?
No.
Yeah, but I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh no.
Yeah, actually, maybe you're right. Maybe it's familiar,
Is he
no
a
idea
pig
why.
fox? Something to do with pigs.
Classically, these murders are often called the pig farm murders. And Pickton is, I think, Canada's worst serial killer and one of the worst in North America. I think he was only recently surpassed with the discovery of Samuel Little. But up until that point, he was, I think, claiming one of the top spots, which is not something to be proud of, but I think it sets the scene a little bit for the type of guy Robert was. So Robert William Pickton and his brother both owned a farm in British Columbia. It was about 30 kilometers east of Vancouver. They had basically lived on the farm their whole life. Their parents had owned the farm. They're just, farm guys, basically. Some people noted that the farm was, quote, creepy, and Pickton had fairly strange behavior, even though there was no obvious evidence of any sort of substance abuse or drinking. It was just kind of a weird farm dude.
A weird farm dude.
Weird farm boys.
So the Pickton brothers eventually began to neglect the site's farming. They decided to register a nonprofit charity called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. That is a real thing. They registered it with the Canadian government in 1996, and they said the charity was built to organize, coordinate, manage, and operate special events, functions, dances, and exhibitions on behalf of service organizations, sports organizations, and other worthy groups.
I thought it was going to be for the pigs. They were going to host little dances for the pigs.
The pigs.
They do line dancing in the barn or
Like great
something.
little
That's where I thought you were
tutus.
going with that.
Not quite. Basically, it was a way to work around the fact that they wanted to have raves and wild parties featuring some of Vancouver's most prominent sex workers, and they would gather in a converted slaughterhouse on the farm. But this was a charity, right? So everything's above board. It's perfectly fine. Everything's a-okay. In March 1997, Pickton was charged with attempted murder of a sex worker, Wendy Lynn Esther. Real sorry about all these names, and unfortunately, there's a lot of names, so I'm going to apologize in advance. He was allegedly accused of stabbing her several times during an altercation on the farm. She informed the police that Pickton had handcuffed her, but that she escaped after being stabbed. And then she stabbed him with his own weapon.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
So that charge was actually dismissed in January of the following year. But months later, the Picktons were then sued by the city for basically violating zoning ordinances. Really exciting stuff. But they have this farm that was zoned for farming, and now they're just holding these massive raves and concerts. And we're talking some of these had maybe 1,500 people showing up to these raves, big stuff.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a, you got the spectrum of jobs. There's farming, hosting raves. They couldn't really be
No.
more different.
So when the Picktons were sued, they thought the reasonable thing to do would be to ignore it. And they held a 1998 New Year's Eve party where they were then faced with an injunction basically banning all future parties. The police were authorized to arrest and remove any person from future events. The charity lost its status and everything was kind of disbanded. However, over the course of 3 years, there was a tip to police, and there was some sort of conversation about that women who went to the farm eventually went missing. So, while on the face of it, it seems kind of lame, it's just this fake charity holding raves. You know, there's drugs, there's drinking, there's sex workers, lots of fun. But actually, behind all of that, there was stuff happening that was not as obvious. So in 2002, police executed a search warrant. They said it was for illegal firearms, but at the property, but they kind of used that to then search more because they're starting to have ideas that perhaps there's something else going on here. Pickton and his brother were arrested, and they were then given a second search warrant that the police were allowed to search the farm as part of the BC Missing Women investigation. So they actually had this sort of task force set up specifically for missing women in BC. And they found that personal belongings that belonged to these missing women were found at the farm. The following day, so they find these missing articles. The following day, Pickton was charged with weapon offenses, but both Picktons, the brothers, were later released. And they decided they were just going to keep Robert, the brother in question, under police surveillance. A few weeks later, they go back to Pickton. They charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Serena Abbotsway and Mona Wilson. Later, they file more charges for Jacqueline McDonnell, Diane Rock, and Heather Bottomley. A 6th charge for murder of Andrea Josbury was laid just a few weeks later, followed shortly by a 7th for Brenda Wolfe. So through their investigations and they're finding personal items of these women at the farm, they then charge him for 7 counts of first-degree murder. But it doesn't end there.
Oh, dear God.
A couple months later, we get 4 more charges. These are for the first-degree murder of Georgina Papin, Patricia Johnson, Helen Hallmark, and Jennifer Fumiger. Again, real sorry for the names, but we're going to keep going because there's 4 more charges of Heather Chinook, Tanya Holick, Cherry Iving, and Inga Hall. So that brings the total up to 15. At this point, this is the largest investigation of any serial killer in Canadian history. At this point, the farm is fully excavated. That's a word that I have a hard time saying. So they're still searching the farm. We're still going. So at this point, the total is up to 15. That's not enough, though, because a couple years later, we get 12 more charges.
12 more.
Oh my gosh.
Still going. So these are for the killings of Kara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Maureen Fay, Tiffany Drew, Carrie Koloski, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felkus, Andrea Jardine, Wendy Crawford, Diana Melnuck, and a Jane Doe, bringing the total number of first-degree murder charges to 27. Yeah, it's a lot. So it's hard to, like, when I was researching this, and you see all the names, right? Like, you're going through all these names and the amount of charges being laid, and it's really hard to picture, like, just the sheer numbers.
Wow.
So forensic analysis proved difficult because a lot of the bodies had been left to decompose or had been eaten by insects, or, which kind of gets the name of the case, they potentially were fed to pigs on the farm.
That's so horrible.
In 2004, it still gets worse. The government revealed that Pickton may have ground up human flesh and mixed it with the pork that he sold to the public.
No.
Real sorry.
No.
Yes, British Columbia, that's not okay. So basically, the province health authority basically just issued a warning. At this point, there wasn't anything they could do. But because this claim that he fed bodies directly to the pigs and potentially then sold that back to the area, that's where the case gets named the Pig Farmer.
I mean, we all had like a dodgy kebab on like the way home from a night out.
Yeah.
We don't really know what meat that is.
Yeah,
But I'm always pretty sure it's not human meat.
No, that's really grim.
Could be pigeon. No one
Pigeon,
knows.
okay.
It could be anything. Yeah.
And when you see a picture of this guy, and I'm sure we'll post it on the website and on social media, he does not look like someone I would buy anything from, let alone food.
Would you go to his rave, though?
Maybe.
Hell yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's much going on in that area, but maybe.
Yeah.
So then we get to the actual, they have a preliminary inquiry in 2003. There were a lot of publication bans with this story up until like 2010. So a lot of the facts were covered, the names were hidden, details were hidden, that sort of stuff. But at the inquiry, it was revealed that Pickton had been charged with the attempted murder of that first woman at the beginning, the sex worker Wendy Lynn, in 1997. So she testified at the inquiry that Pickton had driven her to his farm, had sex with her, then decided to slap on the handcuffs on her and start to stab her. So she, like I said, stabbed him in self-defense. They were later both treated at the same hospital, where staff used a key found in Pickton's pocket to remove the handcuffs from the woman's wrist. So this attempted murder charge was actually stayed because guess what? They decided that the woman had drug addiction issues and they believed that she was too unstable to testify to secure a conviction.
That's outrageous. And they could have prevented possibly 27 more people dying, or...
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But they say that the clothes and the rubber boots that Pickton had been wearing that evening were seized, and they left them in a RCMP storage locker for more than 7 years. Not until 2004 did lab testing show that the DNA of 2 of BC's missing women were on the items seized from him in the 90s.
Oh, this is just gets worse. This is so sad. This is so sad.
The Vancouver police got that tip, right, that Pickton should be investigated, that there was potentially women disappearing. And they actually also received a tip that Pickton had a freezer filled with human flesh on his farm. When they interviewed Pickton, he denied killing the missing women, and they obtained his consent to search his farm, but the police never did. So as we've seen with lots of like horrific crimes that end up getting their own Netflix specials, there's a lot of things that went wrong with this one.
I think any allegation where someone's like, oh, I think he's got a freezer full of human remains, you should probably just check that out just in case.
Yeah. How long does that take realistically?
Just in case. Just send like some rookie cop down there. Like, it's not a waste of time.
Or if there's an actual crime that happened, why don't you properly investigate it and, just do your job.
Civil duty.
Yeah. Like, or just as a decent human being, let's just follow this through because, sex workers are people too. Jesus. So we're drug addicts.
So we finally get to Pickton's trial in 2006. He, as you would imagine, pleads not guilty to 27 charges of first-degree murder. However, the issue with the case at this point is they aren't sure they have enough evidence to convict on all charges. So right from the get-go, one of the charges was rejected for lack of evidence, so we're down to 26. Then the Justice Williams of the Supreme Court of British Columbia decides that they're going to split these charges into 2 groups, basically. So one group of 6 counts of first-degree murder and another group of 20 counts. And they're going to proceed on a trial with just these 6 counts. The idea, I guess, being that they have a better possibility of conviction with these 6 versus trying all of them at once. And I get it because I can only imagine if you were on that jury, like for this trial, and you're trying to put together like so much evidence, so many people, like it's a lot.
Also, if you're trying to stick, 6 murders on someone, if you do stick 6 murders on someone and he is found guilty of that, chances are he's not getting out of prison at all, which would give him more of a incentive to, fess up to the rest.
True. However, Canada is a bit fucked up in that sense, and we will get to that shortly because...
Do you have the death penalty, by the way?
We do not, but we've got something worse. So... basically the justice decides that doing all 26 charges would be an unreasonable burden on the jury. It could last up to 2 years, and there is a way higher increased chance for a mistrial. So they're going to proceed on the 6 counts. At this point, part of the media ban was lifted, and for the first time, Canadians heard the deaths and what happened during this investigation. Disclaimer, this part's pretty gruesome. So we are told that they found skulls cut in half with hands and feet stuffed inside. We have remains of a victim in a garbage bag with her clothing in his trailer. Like, I don't know how more obvious we need to get, but they keep going. They find part of another victim's jawbone inside the slaughterhouse. We're going to go ahead and skip the rest because it's just grim for no obvious reason. So on the first day of trial of jury evidence, the Crown stated that Pickton had confessed to 49 murders to an undercover agent who was posing as a cellmate. The Crown reported that Pickton told the officer he wanted to kill another woman to make it an even 50, but he was caught because he was sloppy. Fucking amen, he was sloppy.
Yeah, real fucking sloppy.
So that's basically how this trial starts, is that, oh, actually, he confessed to an undercover agent and was kind of like bragging that he wanted. So he's saying that his number is 49, and we haven't even got to that at this point. We were stuck at 26. In 2007, a jury returned a verdict that Pickton is not guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder, but is guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. So, we're still going. It's just down. The whole story is really downhill. I'm really sorry to bring such a bummer to True Crime 101, but oh my god, we're still going. So after reading victim impact statements, the British Columbia Supreme Court sentences Pickton to life with no possibility of parole for 25 years. So this is the maximum punishment for second-degree murder. And it's actually equal to the sentence which would have been imposed on him for a first-degree murder conviction. So, I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter that he was charged with second degree because he was given the same sentence. And in Canada, the highest one is life with no possibility of parole for 25 years. So he will have the possibility of parole. But
after 25 years.
Yeah.
But they'll hopefully deny it.
Hopefully.
Hannah's face right now is just like, it's like, if you could
disgusted.
all see it. I know.
I'm glad you can't, because I look like a tramp.
So one of the things that people were really upset, I mean, there's a lot of things to be upset over this thing. One of them is that the prosecution said that the 20 other murder charges would likely never be tried. And one of the Crown spokesmen says, in reaching this position, the branch has taken into account the fact that any additional convictions could not result in any increase in the sentence that Mr. Pickton has already received. So you can see kind of both ways. Some people are angry because their, daughter will never necessarily get her justice, while others are actually relieved because they don't have to sit through a trial listening to what he's done to them and to have these like gruesome details aired in court and then in like all the newspapers and on the TV and everything. So it's kind of like, I mean, nobody's a winner. It sucks all around. Now, to finish it off, in 2010, various media outlets released a transcript of the conversation between that undercover guy in Pickton's cell. Now, the RCMP censored the undercover officer's name throughout most of the document. His name was still left uncensored in several portions after it was released to the public. It went up like on all the big Canadian TV stations, so like Global News, CTV News, the Vancouver Sun. It was eventually pulled and they've re-edited it, but his actual name went out.
I mean, what? Like, how does that happen? Like, how do you just like make that mistake?
That's just
I mean, you're hoping at this point that a bunch of people have been fired. We can only
I
hope.
hope so.
Now, to end it off, there was another press conference because everybody loves a press conference. And Deputy Chief Constable Doug Lepard of Vancouver Police Department actually apologized to the victims' families, saying that they basically wish they could have caught him sooner and that they could have done better, and that, more mistakes were made and we wish we could undo them. And, behalf of everybody here and everyone who worked on the investigation, we just want to apologize that we did not catch this monster sooner. Which, thanks for the apology, but also so many of these vulnerable women were killed and not investigated. Like we've talked about in previous episodes, based on lifestyle and everything, they just are ignored. We can assume it's the main reason that he went on murdering uncaught for so long.
Yeah, because no one was saying, or no one was looking for him, because no one was taking these allegations seriously.
Well, it sounds like people were noticing they were missing, because, what happened when 15 girls were missing? Because obviously they were telling them eventually that, hey, people go there for a party and don't come back. Or, or maybe the woman that was, I don't know. I guess they apologized, but that doesn't seem good enough. I don't know. You feel like, well, hopefully they've learned.
I don't really feel like you can apologize for a dead woman.
I know.
Do you
I
know what I mean?
almost find the apology,
There are some things which an apology is not enough.
No. Also, I think I'm gonna lay off the pork for a while.
Oh.
I literally had sausages for dinner.
Oh, think about that one.
I hate myself.
So that is the story of Robert Pickton. I think he is, at this point, Canada's worst serial killer. Not worst in terms of North America anymore, but there are tons of additional resources if you want to learn more about the crimes, and ideally more specifically about the victims. I know Crime Junkie podcast does a 2-part series on him. Same with all the big serialized podcasts. Last Podcast on the Left also covers him. There's also a huge post on Murderpedia if you want to learn more. But that is the gruesome story of Mr. Pickton.
Well, thanks for that. Follow us on Instagram, Murder Friends Pod. You can check out, I'll post some pictures, and we can, if you want to see any from the story today. And Twitter is Murder Friends PD. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.